Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the Lunch and Learn this afternoon. We have Dwight Taylor with us today talking about optimizing your Tableau workbooks, second session. So with that, don't forget to fill out the survey. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dwight. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. So today's topic, last week we presented a Lunch and Learn on optimizing your Tableau workbooks part 1, which really involved the order of operations and using filters to facilitate great performance in your workbook. Today we're going to talk about could be argued the number 1 or number 2 stable of good performing workbooks. And that is the performance recorder in Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. Our focus today is not going to be Tableau Server. For the most part in production, traditionally speaking, Tableau doesn't recommend turning on performance recorder in production. So we won't focus on that, but we will focus on Tableau Desktop. And the goal of today's session, hopefully everyone in attendance will walk away with a clear understanding of how or best practices around creating performance recordings and how to understand them, how to look at them, and then most importantly, how to act on the findings of a performance recording, okay? So we're going to dive right in. We'll do an example. We're actually going to, record the performance of one of our workbooks. And hopefully by the time the session is over, I don't know that it'll take an hour, we'll have a clear understanding of, if we have a workbook that we're interested in optimizing and increasing the performance of, how performance recorder, that feature of Tableau, that built-in feature, can help navigate those activities and maybe pinpoint some areas of focus, okay? All right, so performance tip. If you have a slow dashboard, you should always start with a performance recording. Regardless to whether you have filters that are maybe, based on our first optimization, Lunch and Learn, regardless to what you know about your workbook, it's always good to take a performance recording. The performance recording, if you follow the steps that I'm going to outline on the slide, will guarantee that from a desktop perspective and from your workbook perspective, you know exactly what's happening every time your workbook loads, okay? And, while I'm going to demonstrate doing this during this session, what I wanted to do is actually list out the step-by-step tasks that I teach my team whenever they're recording a performance recording. This is what, this is how I instruct them to do it, and this way you guarantee you're getting a clean and, as much as possible, accurate performance recording. One thing to note here, the performance of a laptop or desktop or wherever Tableau Tableau Desktop is installed contributes to the performance of your workbook. And so while we won't touch on these, we'll just leave this with you as a caveat. If you have a slow-performing laptop, that could sort of shade or, corrupt a true performance recording. In other words, you're having performance problems that's outside of Tableau, which is one of the reasons why you're having a performance issue on your desktop. A few examples of that is a laptop that's been compromised by malware, and it has a bunch of malicious or nefarious applications running on it, and those applications are consuming all of the computer's memory or the computer's CPU. I've seen it way too many times. So something like that, performance recorder is not going to tell you that. In addition, you're going to get bad performance with your workbook, but the issue may or may not be your workbook if your laptop is not performing well. So I guess a sidebar tip would be, make sure you don't have a bunch of stuff running on your laptop when you try to do a performance recording outside of Tableau, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the step-by-step. Now, performance recording. it bears noting, we talked about this when we talked about the cache, when we did the caching lunch and learn, so I won't get into this too deep during this session. But Tableau Desktop leverages caching. And so it does its best using your hard drive to save the results of database queries, Tableau extract queries, so that every time you come into Tableau, it doesn't have to reinvent the wheel and do the work, the heavy lifting of querying data all over again. The cache is a cache on your local hard drive. It is specific to the profile of the user account that's logged on to the computer, and it can actually give you some sort of strange results when you do a performance recording. So I said that at the beginning. As we walk through the steps, it'll become clear why I said that, why I brought up caching for Tableau Desktop, okay? All right, so the first step is when you want to do a performance recording, what I always recommend users do is save the workbook that you want to record the performance for on the dashboard or the worksheet that you actually want to record the performance for. So, you know, in a workbook that has multiple dashboards, you can actually, if you're like working on a worksheet and then you save the workbook and close it, that worksheet, Tableau by default, will open that worksheet up the next time you open the workbook. Because of this fact, the first recommendation is whatever dashboard or whatever worksheet you want to record the performance for, make sure you have that dashboard or that worksheet selected, save your workbook, and close it. That will guarantee that as you follow these steps on recording your performance, that when you open up Tableau, you're not recording the performance of something totally unrelated to what you want to actually get experience about, okay, or the performance for. So that's the first step. Second step, close all instances of Tableau on your computer, all right? The step after this close step is necessary that you close all versions of Tableau, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do the next step, all right? So in addition, closing all instances of Tableau guarantees that when you record the performance for a dashboard or worksheet or whatever you're recording the performance for, you're not being impacted by other instances of Tableau being in memory on your computer. Because once again, the performance is also subject to the resources of the local computer, your laptop, right? The memory, CPU, and hard disk space and how they're performing. So you want to try to reduce external factors that could corrupt your performance recording. Step number 3, empty the Tableau desktop cache. This really involves just deleting a folder on your computer. Now, I will note here that it could be sort of difficult finding this folder. And the reason it's difficult is because the app data folder, this folder right here, is hidden by default on all Windows computers. And by the way, these instructions are just for Windows users. If you're a Mac user, I'm not really sure. I don't work with Macs, so that's a sort of a gap in my Tableau skill set. However, this folder exists on every Windows computer, Windows 7 and above, and I think JLL, the standard is Windows 7, and so it's the same folder path for Windows 8 and Windows 10. You want to delete this cache folder after you close all versions of Tableau. If you don't close the versions of Tableau and you try to delete this folder, you're going to get errors. That's because it's, you know, Tableau is connected to it and doing stuff in it, right? So that's the reason why in the previous step you want to close all versions of Tableau. Dwight, if I delete my caching folder, won't I break Tableau? No, you will not. Absolutely not. You can delete the entire folder. That's why it's blue. So on your C drive, the users folder, your specific login name. Mine is Dwight Taylor, so right here I would put Dwight.Taylor. Under that folder, there's an app data folder, local folder, Tableau folder, and then a caching. Only thing you want to delete is the caching folder. Don't delete the whole Tableau folder. Really not necessary. So just delete the caching folder, the entire folder. And when you open up Tableau the next time, Tableau will just recreate the folder if it's not there. No problem. And it'll be empty. The reason we want to do this is because we're recording the performance of our dashboard. if Tableau is using caching to load our dashboard, it's not giving us a true picture of the overall performance. Right? We don't want to use caching. We want everything to be created from scratch. And deleting that folder is an easy way to do that. Now, if you read Tableau documentation with respect to emptying the Tableau desktop cache, Tableau recommends that you simply refresh the data in your workbook. For example, if you're using a TDE, if you refresh the data, that will invalidate the cache. The reason I don't use that approach is because sometimes you can have a large data source and it can be a lengthy amount of time to sort of refresh a data source. An easier way to do this under the context of performance recording is simply delete the folder. You don't have to refresh data, don't have to wait for it to update and for Tableau to sort of, data crunch everything and do the analytics for the data source. You simply delete the folder and you can move on to the next step. And we're going to actually perform these steps, okay, in the demo, all of them. Okay, so the next step is open Tableau desktop only. Now, the reason that only is in caps is because when you're doing the performance recording, I do not recommend that you try to do a performance recording by double-clicking the workbook that you want to record the performance for. Why? If you double-click the workbook, unbeknownst to you, Tableau is going to populate the cache automatically. And since you don't have the performance recorder turned on, by the time you turn it on, Tableau is by the time you record the performance of anything that you do in the workbook, Tableau is already using a cached version of the data. Okay, so open Tableau desktop only with no workbooks open. Start your performance recorder after you open Tableau desktop. Then, using either the file open or the open workbook link in the right side of Tableau desktop, then you open up your workbook after you've turned on the performance recorder. Now, because of the first step that I recommended, when you open that workbook, Tableau is going to start recording the performance for the dashboard that you last selected when you saved and closed the target workbook. Okay? So it's automatically going to record everything that's happening with that workbook. Then what you want to do is, if you have let's say you have a dashboard and you have a lot of actions on your dashboard. In other words, let's say you have a map of states. When you click a state, it filters 2 or 3 worksheets on your dashboard. And what you're noticing is that the dashboard opens fine, but the moment that you click a state, the performance degrades. Right? The moment that your action goes into play and starts filtering other worksheets, you're suffering performance. Well, this step entitled Perform, the actions to capture performance, you want to do whatever that is if that's your area of focus. For most of you, it'll probably just be the overall performance of a single dashboard, so you don't need to click or do anything. All you do is open the workbook, record the performance, then the next step, stop the performance recorder. The moment that you stop the performance recorder, Tableau is going to, on your desktop, automatically create a brand new Tableau workbook that contains all of the data that was recorded when you started the performance recorder and opened up the workbook, opened up the target workbook. All right, it's going to automatically pop up on your machine. And then the next note is really important. Prior to Tableau 10.1, I think, when you saved the performance recorder, by default, it saved it as a TWB and not a TWBX. And for those of you who may not be aware of what that is, a TWB is a Tableau workbook where the data and all the external files are external to the TWB. A TWBX is a nice shrink-wrapped package of your performance recording. So, you don't have to follow this procedure. You can save it as a TWB if you like. My recommended approach and the way I train our team is save it as a TWBX. That means that you have everything in a nice archive related to your performance recording, and you can then begin to analyze the results. Okay. Once again, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. If you have a question with anything that I've shared up until this point, jump right in and ask it. You don't have to wait till the end. You can ask it right now. Feel free. Okay. All right, let's go to the next dashboard. So on this page, I have what is going to be very hard for you to read, and the intent is for not not for you to read this content. Once again, we're going to go through a live example. You'll be able to see it much more clear when we go through the example. This is a screenshot of a performance recording. The purpose of this slide is to highlight specific areas of the screen for you, general areas, so that when you do your performance recording, you'll know what you're looking at. Up in the upper right-hand corner, the first square is the total load time for the dashboard, worksheet, or story that you just recorded the performance for. Now, if you are doing multiple things when you record performance, this time will represent the overall time. But, like as I mentioned before, most of you will be recording performance for a dashboard, and you really just want to know, why is this dashboard taking 30 seconds to load when I want it to take 5 seconds or 3 seconds. And one of the things that I traditionally do with all of my developers or designers is, I hold them to a standard of no matter what dashboard you create, no matter how you create it, it has to load in under 7 seconds, period. Doesn't matter whether you don't have a cache, do have a cache, or whatever. If your dashboard doesn't load in under 7 seconds, you have some opportunity to improve. And so keeping that standard forces them to really think out of the box and challenges them to increase performance. And I got to say, after some time of training, it actually is possible, no matter how complex the dashboard is, to guarantee that it loads in under 7 seconds. All right, so this gives you the total load time. The next section is the timeline. Now, the timeline does a number of different things. And I'll go over each one of these, and then when we do the demo, you'll be able to see how that sort of applies. So it breaks down, it gives you 4 dimensions that it breaks down the data according to. Those dimensions are the workbook, which is the name of the workbook, and you can see that the name of this workbook that I took the snapshot for, maybe you can't see it, is Tableau Lunch and Learns Optimizing Your Tableau Workbook Part 2, the workbook that we're actually working in. Yeah, true. And then it gives you the dashboard, or whatever it is you're looking at. Now, if you're recording the performance for a worksheet, you won't see a value in dashboard. You'll see the value in worksheet. If you're doing it for a dashboard, you will actually see a value for the dashboard and every worksheet on the dashboard, right, and the performance at element. Then the 4th item is the event. Now, in Tableau, when Tableau spins up or renders a view, which is the technical term for what Tableau does when it produces a dashboard, when it renders the view, there are a bunch of activities that take place, stuff that actually goes on in order to render that dashboard. That's an event, right? So you get a list of events. The next area, or the analytic or measure area of the top section, the timeline section, actually tells you how long each step took, and it uses a Gantt chart bars in order to do that. The time sequence is along milliseconds, so milliseconds, and then the total is the total number of seconds. So each bar, gives you a series of time, and you can hover over the bar to see, the duration of time that it took and when it started, the time during the load process. The top bar, which is labeled Open Workbook, is designed to give you the overall picture of how long it took for the dashboard to open, so an end-to-end sort of single bar for the total duration. Everything below that is when things happen, what things happen and when. And the thing I want to note about the timeline view is that because Tableau has a parallelization feature, which means stuff happens at the same time, different things happen at the same time, this view will give you a very good image of what type of things are happening simultaneously. For example, if your dashboard view has 7 queries in it, all 7 queries probably will kick off at the same time, depending on what type of queries they are and what they do and their level of complexity. They won't finish at the same time, but they could kick off at the same time. And so that view is a very good view. The next view is events sorted by time. So this is basically a bar chart that ranks your events from the longest event to the shortest event from top to bottom and color codes them. right? And then you have a legend of the names of the events. What's interesting about this view is that if you click on the executing query event type, you actually will get the actual query that ran. Now, something that's really important. Sometimes you can click event query and it will not contain actual SQL syntax. For example, you see here, I see an open paren, I see the word restrict. On the next line, I see an open paren, the word aggregate. On the next line, an open paren, the word project. And then on the next line, such and such and such. This is not actually SQL. The reason it's not is because I'm actually, the data source that I recorded this performance for is actually a TDE. It's a Tableau data extract. That means that if you click on execute query, what you're going to see down here is actually VizQL. Now, VizQL is a proprietary language for Tableau, and so I'm giving this to you so that when you click a query and you want to copy and paste that query and run it against your SQL server, sometimes you may not be able to do that, especially if you're using a TDE. Now, if you're using a live data source to SQL Server and you click executing query, you'll get raw SQL, the SQL that was run against SQL Server, okay? So it really depends on the type of data source. The type of data source that you're using determines what appears when you click an executing query bar in the event sorted by time worksheet. You can only click on, or you will only see a query if you click on the executing query event. Any other event won't show anything in that chart below, okay? All right, it's time for a demo. So let's do a demo, and what we're going to do is follow our instructions. So the first instruction was, and we're looking at the, let's open up one of our dashboards. Which one is this? This is the optimizing part 2. Yeah, I don't think I have the dashboard in here I want, though, do I? Don't think so. Maybe I do. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. Okay, great. So what I'm doing now is step number 1. I'm opening up my dashboard, and I'm going to save the workbook on the dashboard that I want to record the performance for. And this is the dashboard that I want to record the performance for. We can see it has 4 sheets, right? 4 worksheets. And now I'm going to just close Tableau. And based on my instructions, I need to close all versions of Tableau, right? Second step of the instruction was to go find that folder and delete the caching folder. So we're looking for users, we're looking for my name, which is Dwight Taylor, for the app data. And by the way, what I mentioned was, you know, the app data folder is normally hidden. I don't know if you can see my screen, but this folder is sort of grayed out. The easy way to do it is to just type it in the app data, right? You can just type it and then press enter. Even if it's hidden, you'll then see the folders inside of that hidden folder. Then we want to go local. We're going down to Tableau, and you can see the caching folder right here. Now, I'm making sure that I don't have any versions of Tableau open before I delete this folder. I'm going to right-click, hold down the Shift key, delete, and it's going to permanently delete this folder. And we can see that right now it's got 94.2 megabytes of stuff in it, caching data, right? And so, you know, depending on the amount of data that you use to work with Tableau, this folder can get really large. It's optimized, but, you know, it can get fairly large over time if you've never emptied it. Okay, so our folder is gone. Now I'm going to open up Tableau, and I want you to watch this folder as I open up Tableau. You see what happened? Let's go back. So just by I haven't opened the workbook yet. Just by opening Tableau, Tableau recreated the folder. So that's why you don't have to worry about the folder being, you know, or damaging Tableau by deleting that folder. now that we have this is what I meant by open Tableau only, right? So we're opening Tableau, but we don't have a workbook open. I go to Help, I go to Settings and Performance, and I'm going to start my performance recording. Now when you do that, nothing happens. It's not supposed to happen because we're not recording performance yet, because the performance recorder is designed to record the operation of a dashboard, which means we have to open up the dashboard in order for the performance recorder to start doing something. So I'm going to open up the workbook that I just saved. So we're on the tab. Shoot, that didn't work out well. Oh, I know what it was. I need to start this over. I had the workbook open from the session that we're doing today. So I actually want to save this on the right tab before we start the performance recorder. And let's go back, delete, and we'll do this again. Delete the caching folder, open Tableau, start the performance recorder, and open up the workbook. All right, there we go. Start the performance recorder and open up our workbook. Now, there we go. I'm done, right? Now I'm going to do an action that I know is embedded in this because this is what I want to test. When I click on a state, it filters the data below. When I declick, and so on and so on. So I'm just going to click on 3 states and measure that activity. Okay? And then, now that I'm done, I'll stop the performance recorder. Remember what we said, when you stop the performance recorder, Tableau is going to automatically create a workbook on your desktop with your performance recording data inside of it. And depending on the speed of your laptop, it'll take, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds for Tableau to sort of process everything, crunch the data, and create the workbook. Okay, so we've got a workbook here. And we can see, this may be hard to see because it's in the background. Tableau wants you to focus on the things that are colored. But it took 3 seconds, 3.13 seconds for that dashboard to open. And I'm going to expand this worksheet so that we can see what's going on here. We can see that Tableau executed one query, and it computed the layout of 3 things. It only says 2 things here, and this is a second note that I want to share with you. When you do a performance recording, Tableau filters out events that took less than 1/10 of a second to run. Any event that took less than 1/10 of a second to run, Tableau filters out. But all you have to do is either change this to a 0, or you can just drag the slider over, and then you can see all of the events. Now, as you see all of the events, it gets kind of sort of involved, right? This view kind of opened up, and there's a whole lot of stuff in here that we didn't see before. But one thing we can see, since we know we have 4 worksheets on our dashboard, we can see that this is a worksheet. Here's a worksheet, second worksheet. There's the 3rd worksheet and the 4th worksheet. So all of our worksheets are running. As I mentioned when I talked about Tableau doing things in parallel, you can see that these are all queries that are executing, but they're all executing in the same block of time, right? So they're executing in parallel. All the queries that are necessary for this particular sheet are executing at the same time. And these queries are executing at the same, these are sorting data events right here. And then we can see the rest. All of these tick marks are actually activities that are happening inside of Tableau, right? And this bar represents the overall time. So it took 3.13 seconds for the dashboard that we were recording the performance for to load. The next area is the events sorted by time. I'm going to open that up a little bit so we can see all of the activities that happen. And so we can see at the top I have a long, lengthy, compared to all the other processes, this is the one that really is causing my performance problem. The reason it's causing my performance problem is because I have a horrible worksheet inside of my workbook, which I'm going to show you in a second, but it's taking 1.3 seconds just to compute the layout of something. And we can see when I hover over this bar, if you look at the tooltip closely, you can see which worksheet is causing this performance drain, right? It says the worksheet name is prep, and it's on the dashboard called dashboard, which is the one we recorded the performance for. So because I know this, and this seems to be the thing that's, you know, for example, uncompressing the workbook, which is when you have a TDE and a TWBX, this is the time that it takes Tableau to unpackage the data, put it on your hard drive, and then start querying it. It only took, you know, 0.2 of a second, approximately, right? It was very short. This process, however, is taking a long time. And so let's take a look at that worksheet so that we can start to address our performance issues. I'm going to go to the worksheet, and let's look at what the problem is with this worksheet. So you can see what I'm doing here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dimensions, 1, 2, 3, 4 measures in a spreadsheet type of format. And you can see how long this is. And let's look at how many marks there are. I have 5,723 marks on this spreadsheet. So according to my performance recorder, this spreadsheet or this worksheet is taking an inordinate amount of time compared to everything else I have to do on the dashboard. And we can scroll all the way down, right? It's sorted in descending order. So when you do a performance recording, these queries are very helpful, right? Now let's say, let's go back to our dashboard, and let's say this query is actually, we don't like the amount of time that this query is taking. It's only 0.1 of a second, but let's, for instance, say we don't like it. We can see the data source if we hover over the tooltip. Tooltips in the performance recorder are extremely informative, right? It tells you exactly where to go and what to look at when you want to look at things. And the color coding is good as well. So if I hover over this query and I click this bar, it then gives me this query. I'm going to change this and actually add the command to the tooltip so we can see the entire command. When I hover over this command, I can see the command. Now, let's hover back over this query and figure out which worksheet is causing this query to run. And we can see that the worksheet is prep. When I hover over this, I can see exactly what VizQL is doing. So the middle of this VizQL statement says it has to group by category, region, ship mode, state, subcategory, and the dimensional quarter of order date. That's what TQR means, right? And then it's got to sum discount, profit, quantity, and sales. And it's got to do all of that before it can actually render the view or show your user the dashboard. So if I wanted to improve the performance of this workbook, the key is found, number one, in this bar right here, identifying the worksheet that's causing a long runtime, and this query, the longest running query. So the first bar and the longest running, now depending on the type of workbook that you have, you'll get something that looks totally different than this. The first bar won't be blue. Sometimes the first bar will be green because the query is actually taking a long time. You'll see that clearly if you use live data sources like something against SQL Server or something like that. You'll see the green bars are prominent in terms of the length of time that they take.
Actually, Dwight, one question. Yep. This one, it shows only executing query is only 0.12 seconds, whereas the layout is taking time. So we need to analyze the query?
No. Well,
because the query...
That's a great question. As I stated, usually, traditionally, what you want to do, because the events sorted by time is sorted in descending order, what it's going to tell you is going to tell you right up front at the top the things that are taking the longest amount of time to execute. So usually you want to focus on those. And the reason I went to this spreadsheet is because the compute layout is taking so much time because of how many marks we have.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So to your point, what I would do is I would be focusing on, I wouldn't focus on the query, I would be focusing on this layout right here.
Yeah, that's what I want to confirm. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
This layout, you know, I built this worksheet on purpose the way that it was going to cause a performance drain for the sake of this example. But absolutely, because our performance is telling us that it's the longest running step, that's what I would be focusing my attention on. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dwight.
Sure. Okay. That's today's Lunch and Learn. Now, I will talk a little bit about each one of these events. So, as you can imagine, computing layout for Tableau means Tableau has to calculate the worksheet. In addition to calculating what it needs to show in the worksheet, it needs to calculate the area in which you've given to show it. And here's a bit of a challenge which is not apparent when you look at the dashboard that I was looking at. What's not apparent is that the prep worksheet is up here, and if I have it selected, you can see if I go to layout that the height of it is only 2 pixels tall. So the reason Tableau is having such a challenge with drawing the layout of this this worksheet is because I have a horrible looking worksheet to begin with. Let's go back to that worksheet. I have a horrible worksheet to begin with. In addition, I'm challenging Tableau to fit all of this in an area that's 2 pixels high. Okay? Now, if you spend any time with Tableau, what you know is Tableau dynamically, let's say you turn labels on for everything. When you turn labels on for everything, by default, Tableau does not allow labels to overlap one another and sit on top of one another, because Tableau knows that if it does that, it makes the chart unreadable, right? So if I shrink this size down to something that's really small, Tableau is going to do its best to show what it can and hide what causes an overlap. But basically what I'm attempting to make Tableau do is do something that's totally unreasonable, right, like it's doing right here. These numbers are totally unreadable, right? And so when you create a view like that, and Tableau has to draw 5,000 marks, and in the midst of drawing 5,000 data marks, when we say a mark, this is a mark, this is a mark, that's a mark, that's a mark, that's a mark, you know, when it has to draw that many marks on a space, and then you give it a minimum amount of space to do that, that is a performance drain for Tableau. Okay? That's why this layout is taking so long. Of course, it's intentional on my part, as I've already stated, so that I could highlight, you know, what happens when you record the performance of your dashboard. So in the previous session, we talked about the anatomy of a dashboard, and one of the topics that we talked about is size, right? And one of the recommendations is choose a fixed size. The reason you choose a fixed size is because within a fixed size, you have a finite amount of space to arrange your content, and when you do that, it takes Tableau much less time to compute layout for all of your content, number one, when it's fixed size. Number two, when you know, Tableau doesn't have to figure out where to put things. It already has a predefined set of dimensions that it can work with. Very easy for Tableau to do. So if I change the prep worksheet to, you know, much less dimensions, even if I keep all 4 measures, be really simple for Tableau to do it, and it would take nowhere near 1.30 seconds, because most of the layout objects you can see, if we filter this by only layouts, you can see that the layouts, all of them, take less than 1/10 of a second, right? They're all less than, well, this one is, okay, a tenth of a second, but the remaining of them are less than a tenth. And the reason this one takes a tenth of a second is because of the type of chart that it is. So, my point with layouts is that if you have a layout that is that you're using on the dashboard, the likelihood of Tableau taking a long time to produce it is very low, unless you do something like I did here. Okay, hopefully that helps someone. Okay, I think that's it for today's session. What's my encouragement? Don't use Tableau to build spreadsheets. I know that Tableau has, highlight charts and it does allow you to build charts, but when you do that, the number of marks will degrade the performance of your dashboard overall, guaranteed, especially if you have many dimensions and many measures. All right. Any other questions?
What do you recommend, Dwight, if the client comes to them and that's what the client wants?
Hey, you got to build what the client wants, right? Can't really argue with the client. But I will tell you. So I'll talk. This is outside of the scope of this Lunch and Learn, but I will make a comment to what you just asked.
Okay.
Most of the time when you begin to build Tableau dashboards for a client, the client already has a picture in mind of what they want. The reason that they have that picture in mind is because they're already receiving some form of reports. The client that comes to you and asks you to build something like this, I would endeavor to wager that that specific client receives mostly Excel spreadsheets or reports. That's why they want it to look this way. That's what I'm familiar with. That's what I understand, right? But Tableau is a tool designed to help you communicate this information in a visual way. So, for example, if I take this chart and I ask you which one of these numbers has a problem, it'd take you forever to tell me, number one. Which one is trending up? Which one is trending down? We're going over time. It's clearly a timeline here, right? Which one is going up and which one is going down? Yeah, it'd take you forever to tell me that, right? So what Tableau endeavors to do is to encourage designers to leverage color, size, position, and shape to communicate what's happening over time, as opposed to giving users raw numbers and allowing them to decipher what's happening over time. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're looking at a spreadsheet for a trend, you're going to miss the trend. You're not going to see it clearly. 9 times out of 10, you're going to miss it because the human brain is not designed to. So if you're comparing this number to this number to this number to this number and this number, can you really gauge the trend? You probably could if it's only 5 numbers, but the more you begin to do that, you're going to miss something, right? So visually, so what I like to do is I create the spreadsheet for the client, as complex as they want it, as long as it takes to run. I never mention to them the performance hit that we're taking for creating something like this in Tableau. And then, after they're satisfied with that, then I present alternatives. We could replace the spreadsheet with a line chart, or maybe a dual axis bar chart and line chart. That'll quickly let you see what's going on in a hot second, as opposed to looking at raw numbers. So that's usually how I handle that. Okay. Deliver what the client wants. After they're satisfied, present alternatives. It's a winning approach, I promise. Okay, here we go. Thank you for the session. Please, everyone on the call, we encourage you to take the survey. Helps us a lot. Helps the product owners a lot. There's a link here for getting some more information on performance recording with Tableau Desktop. And I want to thank you for your taking time out today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Hopefully I shared something that was helpful to some.
Anyone have any last-minute questions for Dwight?
Yeah, how do I get off this call?
All right, well, thanks, everyone, for joining. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dwight. Much appreciated. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dwight. Much appreciated. Thanks.